This is Steve Harris from Iron Maiden and British Lion. You listen to Andrew McCasebit from Scars and Guitars.
G'day everybody and welcome to the show. This one's unexpected, but very welcome. It's a chat with Zoe Marie Federoff from Cradle of Filth. Now, the opportunity to have a chat with her is due to an Australian tour, so of course we discuss a little bit of that, but as this is an instalment in the Chronicles of Filth, I'm grateful to Zoe as she allowed me to dive a bit deeper, well actually a lot deeper, as we discuss her relationship with Dani and Des, the group's manager, songwriting processes, how she feels the group resolves conflict, and much, much more. Now, in addition to Cradle topics, you people who have been listening to the show for a long time know that this is a conversation. This is not a Quanda-style interview. So if you're new to the show, it's not that. Lifestyle topics, social issues, and more, they also feature. So here she is, Zoe Marie Federoff from Cradle of Filth. Morning, or good evening.
One of those, yeah. You must be Andrew, right?
Correct, yeah.
Nice to meet you, Zoe.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. I've been looking forward to this chat. I had a chat to Ashok last night, and he conveyed the great news that you guys are engaged. So I just wanted to offer you a long life and a good health, as I did to him last night.
Thank you very, very much. We'll need the luck. So,
if you don't mind me asking, how challenging is it to work in a band with your spouse, or work in any environment, to be honest with you, with your spouse?
It actually makes things really easy because we kind of get each other already. We have this natural flow to things, and he knows what calms me down. I know what calms him down. He makes me coffee pretty much every morning on tour. So I am brainstorming with him. It makes it much more pleasant, I would say.
Well, yeah, my wife and I are about to go into business together, you see. So that's the reason I ask. There is a reason, outside of curiosity, of course. But I don't know. We've been together 17 years, married for 14 of them. I think on occasion, I think we might murder each other. But, I think we'll get by.
Do you still find each other just hilarious and delightful?
Some days, yes. Other days, maybe not so much. It's more her toward me, I think. She doesn't like this music at all. She's right into rap and R&B and all that stuff. So she doesn't understand this music, and she appreciates my interest in it. But I'm not saying we lead separate lives, because of course we don't. We cohabitate and raising kids and dogs and virtual zoo practically. But I think it's just, you're still yourself, even after 17 years. You can't not be you, right? Because It's like an elastic band. You've still got to, but we give each other the space to do it. But it's, I don't know. It's a challenge awaits, I suppose. We've never done it before, so we'll see.
Hey, crossing my fingers for you guys. Good luck. My parents work together too in one of their jobs, so they pull it off.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. I'll let you know on the next chat how we're going with it, I reckon. So, look, this chat, I'll certainly ask you about the tour, but I've conducted a ton of interviews with the ex-members of the band and a few of the current members. So I was mates with Stuart, and I've had chats with Paul and Sarah, only a recent chat. That was in the last 12 months or so. So I tend to go fairly deep into the world of Cradle of Filth, because I'm one of those old Iron Maiden fans that made the jump across to Cradle of Filth back in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're OG, okay.
Yeah, so I won't be a punisher, though, I promise. Okay, so it's not going to be an inquisition. And Lindsay and I get along fairly well as well, I've got to say. And she said how much of a sweetheart you are.
I adore her. She's actually my maid of honor in me and Ashok's wedding. So.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, lovely, lovely lady. Yeah, right.
One of my favorites.
I've got to start by asking, how were you recruited for the group?
So I'm very lucky because friends of mine spoke my name when it mattered, as I always say. It was 1 month until a US tour, and the position opened up. And I was good friends with a fiance of Cradle's former tour manager, and they pitched me, and had to be an American, had to be me, because there was no other time to get a visa for someone else. And 2.5 years later, I'm here still. So I thought it would be one tour, but.
What's the most enjoyable thing about being in the band?
Definitely my future husband. He's a delight. He's the funniest person I've ever met. But if we're moving beyond him, probably the fan base, because these are just the most wholesome and loving fans you can imagine. Everyone's just so kind everywhere.
Hmm. So far, I appreciate you're a couple of years into your tenure, so we're talking about a couple of years here, and I know you've been a musician for a long time, but just focusing on Cradle, what's the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome in your time in the group?
The first month only really was a big challenge because I had 1 month to prepare for this first tour. And that was crazy, especially because up until then, I'd never been a live keyboardist. I used the keyboards in the studio for songwriting. And so having to make a jump in 1 month to learn the set list, play live and sing live at the same time was insanely hard. And nothing has been that hard since, thank goodness. So it just gets easier and easier.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. Look, I've mentioned that I've had many conversations with the ex-members, and many have gone on record, but many haven't as well, and shared things with me about issues that they've had with the group. So, and I asked Ashok this question last night, but as far as you're concerned, how do you resolve conflict in the band?
I mean, in my time here, I haven't really experienced a lot of conflict, to be honest. I think that a lot of people have this misinterpretation of Dani Filth as some sort of a diva. I've never experienced him to be a diva. I get questions about that quite often, like, oh, what's it like working with Dani Filth? And I'm like, honestly, it's like working with your hilarious uncle, So Dan's great. Dougal, Dani, Ashok, all some of my dearest friends in the world. Martin, I respect him heavily. So I haven't had to see a lot of conflict, I would say, in my 2.5 years.
Mm. Apart from Lindsay, are you in contact with any of the ex-members?
I've heard from Sarah Jezebel Deva as well. She's a doll to me, absolutely a doll, very encouraging, very positive. I'm told Paul Allender only lives 90 minutes away from me now, but I've never made contact with him. Yeah. But people keep tagging us in the same Facebook post. So
catch up for coffee, guys. Yeah.
Maybe one of these days.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. What were your perceptions of the band? So prior to even the opportunity becoming something like a reality, like you're being reached out to and, hey, there's this opportunity, what did you think of the group?
Well, when I was in high school, Midian was one of my favorite albums. I think it's a symphonic black metal masterpiece. So I was not unaware of Cradle. I was even a fan of Cradle and a lot of their older stuff, although I confess I hadn't listened to them so much in recent years before joining. I think around Hammer of the Witches, I hadn't really listened much after that point. So it was catching up on the last decade of their career as well. That was a bit of a challenge for me. But I have at this point, and I appreciate all eras of Cradle for sure.
What era is your favorite from the band?
Midian. I love Midian. It's a great album. It's the anniversary. I wish we were going to do an anniversary tour or a show or something. Let's see what happens.
What is it? The 23rd anniversary or 24th anniversary of it, is it?
25th, actually.
God, I'm losing track of time. There you go. Where's it gone? Yeah, that's crazy, if that's the case. Yeah. So Ashok mentioned that Cruelty was his favourite, which is, of course, many of us, the old fans, that's what we get into. And Stuart's playing on Dusk as well. But as far as you're concerned, what's your favourite song to play in the set list?
Right now it's Saffron's Curse, although I would say one of my other top songs is Cruelty Brought the Orchids, because it just has a great energy and a great drive to it. So, and that's from the Cruelty album, which is another highlight for sure from their back catalog.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, when you're writing, can you tell me about your process for writing and how you bring songs to Cradle?
Well, I think on this last album, I came up with a couple of just keyboard melodies and ideas, and I throw them then at the guitarists, Ashok and Dani. And if they like them, they add riffs and stuff to them. And Dani programs the initial drums. And a lot of this last album, and I'm sure Ashok talked about this, was me and Dani and Ashok on Zoom calls for 10 or 12 hours, just working on new material. And I'm very pleased with the results. I think they are as well.
I did ask Ashok about if there's a traffic light system, meaning does Dani say, yes, I like that, go away and work with that? Do you see him as the executive producer of the band's music?
It's kind of a cooperation between him and our producer, Scott, I would say, because those two together kind of put their heads together and figure out, what direction is this album going in? how does this suit Dan's vision? Because every band has a good producer behind the scenes who knows how to kind of rein it into from more of an outside perspective. So Dan and Scott together is kind of like the council, as we say.
Mm. Look, with the band having had so many members, there's a last count, I might be missing one or two here and there, but 39 tenured members, so appearing in albums, on the sleeves and the CD back in the old language. What do you think it is that you bring that's unique to the band?
My background is a much more poppy subgenre of metal. So I think what I've brought to this particular upcoming album has been just really a focus on hooks and melodies. Also, coming from that Midian era of Cradle, I love that throwback kind of poppy, accessible sound that parts of Midian has. Like Saffron's Curse, Ghost in the Fog, Cthulhu Dawn. There's very strong melodies throughout that album, and so if I brought something that was kind of different to the upcoming release, I would say it was kind of this throwback feel of poppy song structure, accessible melodies. It's still Cradle, it's still heavy, it's still gonna, be very extreme, but at the same time, we wanted to make songs that would get stuck in your head, so it was a lot of fun to be able to contribute my love for that.
Cool. Yeah. Just with regards to the subject matter, you and Ashok, you're clearly both intelligent people, which means that you're well read. So are you going to be bringing in some of your own ideas about some of the topics that you want Dani to cover? Sorry.
I'm so sorry. I think you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, I just said my internet's unstable. I've got the kids at home and the cousins are over playing PlayStation and all the rest of it. Sorry. So they're punishing the internet connection. Yeah. You can relate, yeah.
No worries. Been done that. Were you asking about?
Oh, sorry, it just broke up again.
You were asking about bringing something.
Yes, subject matters and topics that you want Dani to sing about, and you want to become part of the mythos of the band. Dan alone really decides the lyrical direction of the albums, and he's so good at it that I don't think there's any room really to question that. I wouldn't want to. I really enjoy how the dialogue between himself and the audience, the dialogue between himself and himself. There's this whole song on the last record called Discourse Between a Man and His Soul. I love how Dan and his lyrics are evolving to suit his station in life. He's not singing about the same things he was 20 years ago. It's still Cradle of Filth, but Dan has this very deep, introspective soul. He doesn't like to be thought of as a poet, I suppose. Dan's actually quite introverted and humble. It's very interesting because if you question him too much on his lyrics, I think he gets kind of shy about it. But I love what he does. I think on the upcoming album, it's some of his best lyrics yet. Like he wrote some lyrics for the next album that literally made me cry in the studio. I was sobbing. There were tears coming down my face. So I think he's quite special at it. And I wouldn't try to impose any direction on him. You may have answered it, but what do you feel is the biggest misconception about Dan?
That he's somehow a diva or the center of the universe or something. He's not. He's like a hilarious uncle. He's so funny. He's so down to earth. He's a frontman. He's giving himself in ways that the rest of us don't have to, because we talk about parasocial relationships. People look at Dan on stage and they listen to his lyrics and they assume that he's a part of their lives, that they own some piece of him. And so he has to give himself in a way the rest of us just don't, as the rest of the band. So yeah, if you really get to know him, though, he's a very chill, normal guy, and I really, really enjoy working with him.
You must get some of that too, because there are some pretty. I know you mentioned that the fans are sweet and they're lovely, but even I've copped it a little bit from the Dani Filth fanboys. But have you copped it yourself?
There's always some people who don't understand what boundaries are. But as a whole, I haven't had that many weird experiences with the fans. I think part of it is that Ashok has always been there to protect me as well and kind of be a barrier for me, which is nice. So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah. There's definitely a. I'm talking to you, so I'll talk about it. But there's a cohort of the vampire goth. There's a bunch of us that are just metalheads, Iron Maiden fans, Megadeth fans who just sort of crossed over to the extreme stuff when that came out in the early 90s. And I know we're in the extreme minority these days, and most people did come through the Midian thing, and even later, I can't name a lot of the later albums, but yeah, there's a cohort out there that really take it personally, don't they? Like, to your point, like Dan is them, like the James Hetfield thing with Metallica.
I think there are people who take Dan way more seriously than Dan takes himself. And I find that amusing on some level, but on another level, it's like, Danny's an amazing artist, but people shouldn't think that, another human being entirely defines them or speaks for them. I don't think that's healthy.
No, I completely agree. Yeah. Just talking about management, I know Des from Coal Chamber, or formerly, he does a lot of things these days. I'm just saying for reference for the listener's perspective, it's Des from Coal Chamber. He manages the group these days. But what's your perception, and what's your relationship with him like?
I owe Des a big one because Des really helped me and encouraged me to go sober. And I stopped drinking alcohol partially under his influence. And he was there for me right in the thick of it while I was, processing, how am I going to tour sober? How am I going to play shows sober? Because I really hadn't done that before. And he was right there with me, encouraging me like, hey, you got this, you can do this, and you're going to love your life so much better on the other side. And he's been completely right about that. So I'm very grateful to him.
Yeah, I gave up drinking 12 months ago too, but I did it through ayahuasca ceremonies.
There you go.
You can do it, but I was up to 2 bottles a week there at the very end, and 2 bottles of vodka. And it's just becomes habitual and it starts taking over. But did you find the process of quitting, was it a challenge for you?
It was, I don't think I really was per se an alcoholic, but I definitely, especially on tour, used alcohol to numb out stress. And I found that facing your stress takes a lot more maturity and self-control. And so I think the bigger challenge for me was to find where my self-control was, to confront myself and my stress on any given day. And once I learned to be comfortable with myself, to communicate with myself about my stress without the help of alcohol, everything got a lot easier. And like I said, Des was there encouraging me every step of the way. And I'm very grateful to him for that.
Is Cradle a dry band, meaning no one drinks?
It's not a dry band, but definitely, we're all in our 30s, 40s, and even 50s now. There comes a point when you really can't be partying on the road because then you just can't play shows. So.
Yeah, I'm 46 and I gave it up when I was 45. So it's you get to a point where that's it. You've done the partying, and to your point, I think, and I talk about this stuff because I know a lot of people are in our position, right, where they use stress. They use, drinking as the coping mechanism for stress. And it does mean that you take on more stressful things because you've got a coping mechanism. But life, as you are well aware, is all about balance. And without that balance, you collapse and you can't be your very best self.
Exactly. And especially we're adults now, when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you're an adult now. You got to act like an adult. And my big thing too is, I never want to do something or live a kind of lifestyle where my daughter couldn't walk in the room at any time, Yeah,
you're speaking a lot of sense on that topic. Yeah, that's another reason I gave up when my kids' awareness of drinking started to become a thing. And I thought, my wife's father, God rest his soul, was from Croatia, which is a bloody awful, but when it was the, Yugoslavia, and he became an alcoholic for obvious, a lot of people did because there's a war and he had to escape and all sorts of things were going on to him personally. So I completely understand why he ran into alcohol and it ended up killing him, having a stroke, at the end of it. So we've had it in the family, and I know, I'm Irish Catholic and, heritage-wise, I'm Australian, but I'm just saying my mother side of the family is, and I grew up going to family outings where nobody got fisticuffs or anything like that, but you get drunk and then your wives drive you home. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. But there's no dramas. That's the problem. It's not a social ill, but it's a health ill. And my uncle died of it. So as well. So yeah, anyway, I only talk, as I say, I'm glad you went with me on that one there because I'm not pontificating to people. And I know there's a lot of new people who don't normally listen to me who will listen to this chat here, but we talk about these things because it's important for people to understand that there are ways out of it if you're stuck in it. To everybody else, go about your merry business. But if you're stuck in it, there are ways forward.
Let's say if you feel like it's a problem or that you're dependent on it in some way, there's ways to find new avenues towards peace, towards understanding yourself better. And my other thing to say, that you've obviously figured out, sir, is that, your grandkids deserve to meet you. So if it is a problem, recognize it, because your grandkids are going to need to know where grandma and grandpa are.
You're speaking a ton of sense. That's literally one of the key reasons I gave it up. Yeah, because there's things you see when when you're in an ayahuasca ceremony, and there's things that you're privileged to witness in ceremony, and that's one of the things that I could see, but I wasn't there. If that makes sense. I mean, spirit form and looking on, and that's a horrible feeling when you don't want to be in spirit form. You want to be alive and have a flesh and blood body to actually participate in these things. There's a lot of blessings, there's a lot of love around you still, but you feel that longing desire to be reconnected with your family. And mate, we all love music, but without your family, what do you got?
Exactly. At the end of your days, when you're lying there on your deathbed, your family's going to be there, nothing else. So.
Very true. Yeah, very true. Look, I read your bio, and I understand that if this is not incorrect, let me know, but you grew up in a family of metalheads. So was that your entry into heavy metal?
My dad is an OG metalhead. He's awesome. I also grew up Catholic, by the way. And there's a certain intensity, if you grow up Catholic, that actually lends itself well to heavy metal, I would say. So yeah, when I was growing up, I went with my dad to see Iron Maiden. Judas Priest was one of the other albums he gave me growing up. Fate's Warning was another album he gave me. We saw Rush together 3 times, which is not really metal, but still, the progressive rock genre. So I'm really privileged that my dad exposed me to this kind of music, and he still comes to my shows. He's in another band with me as well. So I got to grow up with metal. That was awesome.
But what sparked your interest in becoming in inverted commas, metal musician?
My dad is a bassist and a vocalist, and he had his own progressive metal band in the 80s. And listening to his music and listening to the other albums he gave me, like I mentioned, I was like, I like intense music. I like the intense feeling of things. And then when I was 12 or 13, I discovered that there were bands like Nightwish and Epica and Within Temptation. And that was cool because you saw women who were doing heavy music, but without trying to be one of the guys. There was still a very definite feminine energy to what they were doing, but they were still doing metal. And I just loved that in particular. And I was like, that's the kind of music I want to do.
Is it Perplexity, I think, threw up that you were mentored or tutored by Floor Jansen. Is that correct?
Yeah, Floor was my voice coach. Long time ago,
right. Okay.
About a decade ago.
Yeah, there you go. What were the key things you learned from her?
The most important thing I learned from her has actually a lot to do with my height. So I'm quite tall for a girl. I'm almost 2 meters tall.
Wow.
And I used to shrink myself to make the men on stage with me feel more comfortable and more masculine or something. And Flora noticed that even in my lessons with her, I was kind of slouching and minimizing myself. And she said, why are you doing that? Why are you making yourself smaller? You need to be big. You are big, so be big. And she put this image in front of me in my head of you have to stand and sing against a storm. You're pushing with your voice back against a storm. And if you're shrinking yourself, that storm is going to win. So just that lesson of being comfortable with my body, with my size, with my height, that was a huge, huge gift to me as a vocalist. And I'm forever grateful to her for that.
Fantastic. But you were classically trained well before your introduction. So that was your platform as classical music.
Yeah, I did classical voice studies at university.
Excellent. Do you think you'll move into teaching at some point?
Well, here in the States, if you want to do public education, you have to have something of a more conservative background than Cradle of Filth, unfortunately. But private teaching at some point, perhaps later on in the future when I have more time. I just don't have time for private students right now, between 2 bands and all the other stuff I got going on.
Yeah. Are there any aspiring collaborations, or let's use the word dream collaborations, or musical directions that you'd like to take Cradle of Filth?
To take Cradle, well, Cradle's collabing with Ed Sheeran. I don't know quite how you top that collaboration in the near future. I think everyone's still excited to hear that one. So
Taylor Swift.
that would be the next step, right? Would be Taylor Swift and Cradle.
Logical next step, yeah.
I will say there's quite an interesting cover on the special edition that I think is interesting how we turned it into a Cradle song, but I won't give it away anything else.
Okay, I'll look out for that one. But with you, and I did ask Ashok this as well, but with actually, I think I did. I might not have. God, it was only a few hours ago I spoke to him, but still, I'll ask you now. With you guys having, the partnership in the band, you're both musicians. Do you see that you guys are going to combine forces outside of the group and release something?
We've talked about it, about doing something just together. It probably would not be metal. Might be something more in an electronic or even an acoustic direction. So we'll see. But it would definitely be a couple of years down the road because we're quite busy with Cradle at the moment.
Yeah. What's you been to Australia before?
No, this will be my first time.
Okay, rightio. What have you heard about us? Anything good or bad?
Well, I've heard that you guys are like a giant Arizona. So Arizona does not have as many venomous species as you, but we do have the most venomous species of any state in the US. We have lots of poisonous reptiles and spiders and stuff. So I'm told that your entire country is one big Arizona, and I'm really excited about that because I love venomous stuff. I find it all very fascinating. And then what else? I've heard that you're all I've partied with some of you on 70,000 Tons of Metal, and you're some of the craziest partiers I've ever encountered, but it was really fun. I've heard nothing but good things, to be honest. So I'm really excited.
Is Destroy All Lines bringing you down? Which is the touring co? I'll find out later anyway. But whoever it is, I hope that they're actually taking you to. You hear this term, but I know there's real America and there's real Australia. So look, Melbourne and Sydney aren't real Australia, to be quite frank with you. So Brisbane is a little closer to it. I mean, what I'm saying is they're big global cities. Okay, so they're going to look like any other medium-sized, huge city. Okay, they're not as big as London or New York, but you know what I mean. But I just hope that they take you to somewhere where there's a beach or somewhere where there's a bushwalking opportunity, because you'll no doubt when you're in Brisbane, you'll go to Lone Pine Sanctuary and you'll have an opportunity to see the kangaroos and the koalas and all that stuff. But there is another side to Australia, and I just hope the touring agent has has enough time to be able to give you that chance.
I would hope so too, because, probably how you guys feel. I get really annoyed when people say, oh, I've been to Los Angeles, I've been to New York, I've seen the US. And it's like, no, that's not the US. So hopefully I get to see more of the real Australia.
Look, I'll make this my final question for you. Thanks so much for your time. Got a lot of talent. You've got that. You've got your union there with Ashok, and you've got your partnership there with Dani and Des as well. But what's your ambition for what comes next?
My ambition, you mean personally or musically?
Answer it the way you feel. Go for it.
The greatest thing I will ever do with my life, for me personally, and this is not true for all women, but for me personally, is to be a wife and a mother. So nothing gives me more joy and more pride than taking care of Ashok and my daughter on a daily basis. Marrying Ashok in a couple of months and creating a family with him is going to be a bigger statement than anything I could do with any band. That being said, I also look forward to many more years doing Cradle of Filth with my husband, because I think doing it together has been so much fun and will continue to be just wonderfully adventurous. A great way to have a partnership in life and in music.
That might be the best answer to that question I've ever got.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, there's tons of different directions I could take that, but there's been this, as you well bloody know, there's been this concerted attack on the nuclear family in the past decade or so, and to hear someone who consider those values the pinnacle of what we're all about is just heartening to hear. And I've long said to people, extreme metal, when we say normal people, it's regular people doing this. It's just something that we do, but in our own lives, we are just participative members of society and have families and dogs and cats and partnerships. But there's just so much chaos that goes on in the world. I'm sure you've seen with your daughter when she watches YouTube, and so much disgusting bullshit out there, that the fact that you have your relationship with your daughter and with Ashok at the very center of everything that you do is just fantastic to hear.
But there's no other way to live. I mean, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but are you a Tolkien fan, sir?
Oh, Tolkien. Oh, I won't say yes. My wife's read it, but I read the books as a kid, but I won't say yeah.
You know, there's this great line that some people believe that it's only great power that can keep evil in check. But that's not actually what stops evil in the world. It's everyday people and their everyday acts of love and kindness that push back against darkness.
Yeah. Yeah, very well said. Very well said. Very articulate. Yeah. I'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your time and good luck on the tour. Hope it goes really well.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that one as much as I enjoyed participating in it. Zoe is just a lovely, kind-hearted soul, isn't she? All right, if you've got this far and you're new to what it is that I do, welcome, because many more conversations with the members of Cradle of Filth await. Go to Scars and Guitars and click on the tab up the top of the website, Chronicles of Filth. I'll put a link in the episode description anyway, but many conversations with the members, mostly former members of the group, await. Sarah Jezebel Diva, the great Stuart Anstis, God rest his soul, Greg Moffat, aka Damien Gregori, Paul Allender, Nick Barker, Ben Ryan, Dani himself, Lindsay, Richard Shaw, Wes Sargentson, Paul Ryan, James McIlroy, and the photographers and art directors from the halcyon 1990s period, Mark Bouchette, Nigel Wingrove and Chris Bell. I reckon those two chats there, the one with Chris and the one with Nigel, they might be my favourite. I can't forget Mike Exeter either, who was the engineer on Dusk and Her Embrace. I'm trying to track down as many important people associated with the group from their 1990s period as possible, and there's heaps more to go. We're certainly getting there, though. I don't feel like I'm just getting started because it's been going for some time, but there's plenty more conversations to go, so I am far from the end. That works. All right. Thanks very much for tuning in. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith. Until the next one, it's a goodbye for now.